All
Wow,
right.
cool music.
Yeah. Yeah, I was told that there were. I brought a whole bunch of musical critics. With this program, so a lot of people got the taste developed, and they outgrew the previous version of the music that I started with when I conceived the
Well, it
program.
was the previous music was very loud, and that's why you see me. I was replacing my earphones because I took them off while you said you were going to play the music.
Yeah. So you're one of those.
Yeah.
Hello, Demi. Hello, Granniopteryx. We are talking across the pond. We're talking about between. We're talking between London and New York. And
Hello.
welcome, welcome, welcome.
It's lovely to be in New York again.
Have you been to New York ever?
I have, yes. I arrived. I went there on a an academic trip about 2 years after 9/11, or maybe a year. Maybe it was a year after.
Hmm.
Yeah, there was still nothing done, and there were still people talking to me about the cloud and
Yeah.
the smoke, and so it was still fresh in people's minds. And I walked around New York. I do have to say, and with all due respect to New Yorkers, having being a Londoner, or having lived in London for many years,
Hmm.
I'm afraid that New York doesn't really stack up that well. I mean, it's fine, but for instance, I went into, I thought I'd go into those famous department stores. I went into one of them. It might have been Bloomingdale's or something, and I
Hmm.
was looking for tights, what you call pantyhose over there.
Hmm. Hmm.
And I have an interest in them. I like different sorts with patterns and everything. And I went in there and I didn't see much. And I asked an assistant, well, do you have anything here that's a bit different? And she looked at me, and there was an instant of silence. And then she said, but you've got Marks and Spencer's. And it was then I realized that, London, it's just a monster. I'm sorry, you just can't get round it. New York, I could walk round it myself. There's no way you could walk round London on, just, well, not unless you had a support team with sandwiches and
Hmm.
things.
There is a famous phrase in Pushkin's Eugene Onegin poem that I would fail definitely. It's in Russian. It's like "Все, чем для прихоти обильный торгует Лондон щепетильный." So it's whatever you would wish this sophisticated London town would sell to you. So that, I mean, that's like
Yeah, but he
far from the
didn't.
original, but it's not rhyming, etc., etc. It's a Russian classic. But when I was in London, I think it was 1991. I haven't been there since, and there was the phrase that was popping up in my mind, and my contribution to this sophistication was, we were going usually from Islington by bus to some across along the Oxford Street, and
Yeah.
my one of the things that I finally did was jump off when as it was going, the double
Oh, a
decker,
moving bus. Yeah.
sort of slowing down,
Yeah.
and get to the cart where they were selling jellied eel or something.
Oh, jelly deals. You didn't. I've never had jelly deals.
I
I have
wanted
to.
to try it so badly.
What did you actually try it?
I did, and I'm sorry to report, and this is my revenge for our Bloomingdales. It was nothing
Yeah.
special.
No, I mean the thought of
Nothing
eels. I
to
mean,
write home about.
you just take a look at the face of an eel, and how can you possibly eat it?
No, there is a line. No, I eat eel, I must say, but ate eel. But the thing is, there was a line, and I was wondering because in New York or in Tashkent, where I was born, there was always, of course, there is always a sign that, and everywhere in the world, probably, I haven't been everywhere, but if there is a line, there is something
Oh, yeah,
to
you
be
join the
interested
line.
in.
Yes.
There's something. There's something's going on. So you got to
Yeah.
figure it out how to
Uh-huh.
get what they all want and go away unhappy most of the time. But that's another story. Speaking of hospitality of New York, and that's really kind of should make our blood, collective blood, as they would say today, boil. It's the treatment of people who were bused to New York from Texas, the illegal immigrants.
Ah, yes, you tell me about that.
Yeah, it's amazing because they cross Rio Grande, they cross the border. They're facilitated by Biden's border protection services, and they're given initial comfort, and then they are taken all over the country on taxpayers' dimes, on planes, on buses, etc., etc., etc. Some of them prefer to stay in Texas. But the governor of Texas said, "Listen, would you like to go to New York?" He didn't force anybody, and
Yeah,
he
yeah,
sent
yeah,
a
yeah. I
number
heard
of
that.
buses to New York, and they
Yeah,
arrived at Port Authority Terminal, and it was panic in the city government. The mayor said, "No, you cannot do this," and he did the same thing with Washington D.C., where the decisions are made,
yeah,
which is like this the snake pit. The more I get into politics, I understand the more centralized it is, the worst it is. The worse it is for the people of any country. Any country. Decisions must be made locally. For this, we have to be more active, and we have to elect good local people who know what the deal is, what's what.
yeah. Oh,
So,
I'm going to interrupt you here a
sure, sure,
minute
sure.
because yesterday we got the news that 1,000 and something Albanian young men suddenly fetched up on the shores of Britain. And again, they're taken in, they're bussed to hotels and places like that. And you wonder what's going on in the minds of the politicians who are letting this happen. In our case, it's people from Eastern Europe, well, Albania, and various parts of Africa and Asia. And in your case, it's, well, South Americans all, aren't
Not
they?
necessarily. It's a
Oh,
lot of
really?
people who, yeah. I was reporting recently that again, being told that say to come from one of the former Soviet republics to the United States, you got to get your butt to Mexico, to Tijuana or some other opportune area, and then you pay. You get in a car. It's all agreed previously. You don't leave the country, before you know that everything's in place, and you like Airbnb, except you get in a car and you're being driven across the border and delivered to a safe place, and it used to cost like 3 months, 4 months ago, it used to cost 15 grand. Now it's
Yeah,
$17,000.
yeah, yeah, yeah. It's
Maybe the price of gas has been factored in the raise, yeah. But now they're taken into hotels, and our hotels. Everybody's writing like 3, 4, 5 months ago. Everybody was writing how New York is back and the tourism is back, and now it turns out that there's a huge hotel in Times Square almost that is empty or half empty, and the other half is given to the people who were bussed in, because initial scare, initial fright changed to extreme hospitality of New York, the mayor and such, and they put the person next to the door. As long as the moment it opens, the bus's door opens, the man starts bowing and smiling and saying, "Welcome to New York, welcome to New York. Please come in. Welcome to New York." Shakes everybody's hand, and sometimes he's wearing a mask, sometimes he's not. Sometimes it's a woman, sometimes it's a man. I can tell still. So, so those people they put up in a hotel, 400 rooms, $400 a room, basically. I suspect there are some empty rooms, and I suspect that they pay like agreed rate for the room. City is paying, of course. Nobody's cleaning the rooms for free. Nobody's doing the laundry for free. So those people got to be paid. And now they get free stuff. They get free phone. They get free food. They get free health insurance, and they get everything to get them set up for quite some time in this country, for a few months at least, of
You
existence
do
here
wonder
in the city.
what you know. I have usually gone by the motif that never ascribe to evil what's more likely ascribed to incompetence. Yes.
Follow
But
the money too.
what do you think about? I mean, I've been puzzling it out myself, and I can't think of an answer. What sort of money, what sort of advantage, for instance, I'm talking about the United Kingdom now, what sort of advantage are these people? Most of them are illegal. They drop into the illegal economy. And many of them, I'm sorry to say, the Albanians are associated, at least, with a lot of crime. And you wonder why the governments are tolerating this sort of thing. It's just a puzzle to me.
I don't think there is a shortage of people willing to come to Great Britain legally. A lot of people want to come and live there, and please simplify or change the rules. I don't know why there is a need. Apply if you feel like the country needs people from outside. We know the birth rate is not that good. And please, so do it accordingly. You were elected. You were in the government because you are there. If you wanted to act illegal, you didn't have to go to all this trouble. And if I would like to become a boss of South Brooklyn, Southern Brooklyn, I would kind of go beyond all this trouble and go straight to organized crime system, right? There are ways to get to the top, more than one.
In Britain, the problem is that nearly all of these illegal migrants are men. I don't know how it is in America. I think in America there are women too.
Mostly men.
No women as well.
No, mostly men. There are women. The people bring their little small kids. There is always, every day, one person drowns in the river. Every day, on the average, when they cross.
Well, the point I was going to make is that men don't increase the population. I mean, unless you have women, you're not going to keep the figures up anyway. You're just going to have a surfeit of young men who don't have much to do. It's all very, very strange. And you don't have any answers either, I take it.
Intellectual honesty comes at a premium these days in the West, but we provide it for free, I know. And I must say that I came here as a refugee. I came here after the, I think, 1975, when President Gerald Ford signed Jackson-Vanik amendment, which allowed to tie the immigration policies with trade agreements. And Russia didn't get the wheat, American wheat. Speaking of who's feeding whom, and the Jews got to leave the Soviet Union. The Jews got a chance to go out and immigrate from a country that's what we're talking about, systemic anti-Semitism. This was the country of systemic anti-Semitism. The Jews were not killed in the street most of the time, but everybody knew, you're a Jew, you have certain restrictions on your freedoms, certain restrictions on your opportunities. And you cannot be this, you cannot be that. There is a famous fifth line, so to speak, in your passport that mentions your ethnicity.
Really? Oh, yeah.
It was noted because it's a big confusion among Russians who speak English and do it brilliantly, some of my friends. But there is a difference between the nation understanding what nation is in the West and what nationality or nationalism, for this matter, and what they meant when they say nationality in Soviet Union. Your nationality was your ethnicity, was in your passport. So, because you were not supposed to leave ever. No. Let's use the words as we like to, attach new meanings to them.
Mm-hmm.
So that was the story. So we were brought here. We were invited here. We were invited to escape. It was established that there was a line. I remember 6 o'clock in the morning, and it was January, I believe, or some nasty winter month when my family, my 7-year-old daughter, then uh, we came to Moscow to stand in line, and it was a happy moment because finally we were granted an interview. And we had an officer who talked to us and who said, "Is there a threat to your life? Because that's the basis for."
Mm-hmm. This was
Re-
at the American consulate.
no, it was the embassy. You cannot go
Oh, the
anywhere.
embassy,
You had
right.
to go from Tashkent to. You got to find a place to stay for a few days before,
Mm-hmm.
uh, etc. Because it could be postponed, rescheduled, whatever. So there was this interview, and after officer said that your case will be reviewed, we'll let you know. So, all right, I don't remember either. They gave you right away. They gave you the results, but it was a process. You applied. You had to have somebody here, and so we came here. We were given assistance. We were given. It was given to us by Jewish organizations. Maybe they
Mm-hmm.
got some government grants for this. Could be. I don't know, never investigated. Could be so. But we were given assistance. We were given a start. There were volunteers who would come. Who my friends, an example, they came to this Jewish organization. They said we want to help our friends, and if we come to you with our problems, then we can discuss. Maybe you can help us. And the Jewish organization, they got in touch with somebody who wanted to donate furniture, and I got this furniture. The friends rented the apartment for us in a beautiful, like launching pad type of place in Collingswood, New Jersey.
Mm-hmm.
Very fancy apartment complex that was built to spite all those like one-story houses or two-story houses around it by the park. And eventually, the human nature prevailed, and nobody wanted to live in this apartment building in the middle of all this beauty. So it was basically immigrants, mostly immigrants. And we spent some time there, and then we moved to Brooklyn, New York. So that was the story. So it was not like we were put up in a luxurious hotel, or nobody worshipped us. Most people could not speak the language, of course.
Mm-hmm.
So it was very different from what we have today. It was legal immigration, and it was we knew where the money came from, and we are unable to repay this money. I mean, I have not become a billionaire, but
Mm-hmm.
we just how they call it, pay it forward, right? You help the next guy.
Yes,
You
yes.
cannot.
Margaret Thatcher was, the Prime Minister is also a member of Parliament and has a parliamentary ward. So they still have that responsibility, although they delegate it, of course, to assistants. But she said when she was the member of Parliament, I think it was Hendon. It took in Golders Green, which is a very well-known area where there are many Jews in Golders Green. And she said something like she saw many constituents who were very poor, but none of them were on any sort of national assistance. They were always supported by Jewish organizations. And that was her lodestone for how society should operate. It obviously made a big impression on her somehow, because she kept on talking about it.
Yeah, it's amazing how far back the charity in the human history goes, and goes back to Roman times when the soldiers who were injured in Punic Wars, they were given land, and eventually many places produced, like Italica by Sevilla. They produced two emperors that were born outside of Italy proper. Good emperors, because you know that there were good emperors and the rest of them. Adrian and Trojan came from Trojan and Adrian came from Italica. So they became really places that where proper people were brought
Yeah.
up.
Yeah.
So that was that. And to me, a classical example, of course, is Medici's Florence and Brunelleschi's Ospedale degli Innocenti, famous Renaissance building that was created by brilliant Brunelleschi. And there was the orphanage. It was an orphanage. And the Medici said, we're going to create a charity here in Florence. So he hired Brunelleschi, who was all the rage at the time, and he designed the building. But what happened then was it was the place for those who were left, the kids, babies abandoned by their mothers.
Mm-hmm.
So they took them in and they arranged it all, and they raised the money from the Florence's rich. But the mothers, they figured it all out, and they would on purpose they would leave the kids on the steps of this orphanage, and then they would go and ask to be hired by the orphanage, so they were paid to feed their
to
own
look
kids.
after the children.
Yeah, it was like a first welfare scam, so to speak.
Well, they could keep touch with their children. I suppose it must have been pretty awful to give up your child.
No, the things that happened throughout human history are just something to learn from, and some people learn, some people don't. That's the difference between people. That's the difference between the countries. So what's London today? Is still a war in Ukraine is taking up front pages, or?
Well, yes, there's I did want to talk to you. Yes. Okay. First of all, there's disturbing news in the papers that Europe, that is the countries of the European Union, are losing interest in Ukraine. And after their initial enthusiasm, I suppose, look, I can't imagine that this lack of enthusiasm would be anything to do with Poland, Latvia, Estonia, or even Moldova. But the comfortable, well-settled, sophisticated countries of the European Union, like France and Germany, are starting to think of their heating bills in the winter, and they're losing a lot of interest. And British newspapers are commenting on that. So, yeah, that's in the news. And the other thing is, I was sort of hoping you might be able to help me speculate on the assassination thing, because I mean, I don't know whether you feel that you want to discuss a political hot potato like that at this particular time.
No, it's no problem for me. I'm still wearing my shoes of YouTuber, and that's how we keep people's attention on the campaign, because people have to remember that things are cooking, and I must say that quite a few people already in the neighborhood. Yesterday we were putting up posters on Brighton Beach Avenue, and there was a number of people who knew my programs, who knew me, and not all of them knew that I'm running for United States Congress this year, November 8th, friends. But it was like reasonable, considering the financial investment that I put into this program. It was the best money I ever spent on becoming famous.
Yes.
Unintentionally, but so be it. So yeah, like so many things to me, the assassination of Daria Platonova, as she was her pseudonym, because she considered herself a big expert on Plato. Doesn't make sense. Doesn't make sense at all, because it's just hard to. I mean, all I can think of is like what they call intramural. The palace intrigue.
Yes.
So somebody wanted the attention of Putin, as if he's meeting with Dugin all the time. I know that his other ideologue, Dmitry Surkov, was in and out of favor with him, or they pretended to be so. It's just
Mhm.
like Putin was a president and then the prime minister.
Just a minute. I want to interject here because the
Go ahead.
last political commentator I heard talking about Dugin said that no, he's hardly anything to do with Putin anymore. And that, he said it with a lot of assurance. And now you're telling me that he was in and out of his office. So that's interesting.
No, I'm talking about another guy. There is a number of candidates who kind of are told, as far as I know, they have certain influence on what is called Russia's current philosophy. And
Mm-hmm.
Dugin was, because the whole thing to me, and I have people like twice a day. I have guests who are very into the situation. They very much into situation in Ukraine and in Russia, and every one of them, we rarely agree on what's behind this whole
Oh,
thing.
right.
And to me, and they're all respectable people. They're really knowledgeable, and more
Yeah.
importantly, they do a lot to
Mm-hmm.
resolve this whole thing. They raise money. We started raising money for some American medical scientist who goes to Ukraine and spends most of his time in Ukraine and brings the medical supplies that he knows are
Yeah.
necessary
Yeah.
there, and responsible man. Immediately raised like I would say $300 last night during like 10 minutes after the conversation. I haven't checked yet what we have so far, but it will be all entirely passed to this guy who is a knowledgeable American, Colorado, Denver, Colorado based guy.
Mm-hmm.
So where were we? Yeah,
Well,
and the thing with the ideology, to me, this whole thing started because there is a lack of national idea in Russia. It's a serious thing to consider for a person like Putin, who wants the what they call the legacy. After all, after he achieved everything, basically what he plans to do, so he quashed the opposition. It's non-existent. A lot of rich people, a lot of oligarchs keeping him afloat. Whatever needs to be resolved, he just calls them up, say pay for this, pay for that, and they do it. Pay for the Olympic Games, pay for the Mundial or Mondial, whatever the soccer championship. So that's settled. But what about the people? People are not very happy. They want to live in a great country, and that was the thing throughout the history. Uh,
Gogol. Are you talking about Gogol's idea? Where are you going to, Russia?
yeah, but Gogol was more of a romantic. He never went into politics. His
Mm-hmm.
work was never politicized. In one of the eye-opening books in my sorry in my personal history was Nabokov's book about Gogol, and where he explains Gogol like I never read anything like it. So it was really like life-changing experience for me. It's called Nikolai
Oh.
Gogol. Very good book, not too big, but the thing is that the national what's Russia's core? Do we go? Where do we go next? How would we develop further on? And so he started promoting. It was traditional recognition of philosophers in Russia because we love this whole we collective. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
I cannot say they because I speak Russian most of the time these days. Uh, that will change.
Yeah.
But the truth of the matter is that it's something that wouldn't make sense. And she was really a nasty speaker on television. I went through a number of programs, as we discussed that she was on, and she was really like this type of erudite young person who just gives names without much thinking. There's no specific feel. It's in Russia. It's called zabaltovich, to cheddar it up. This whole thing just to cover your own shallowness. There was no kind of Dugin has his own shortcomings in my eyes. At least I saw the debate of his with Bernard-Henri Lévy.
Oh,
It's
yeah,
on
yeah, I've
YouTube.
heard of, yes.
It was so shallow and empty on both ends.
Really, both of them?
Both of them, they looked like I'm not a big Dugin reader or Levy's reader, or I mostly talk. I mostly talk. But it was amazing to me. There was nothing. It's like retail philosophy without any, with a lot of simulated motions and rehearsed phrases, and it was not very elegant.
I've heard, of course, I haven't heard Dugin talk firsthand because I don't speak Russian, but I've read reports, and he appears to me, he sounds like a Nazi. And the Nazi ideology contained many internal contradictions, and he was doing the same sort of thing. I wish I could think of a specific example, but you could see he was desperately, in one particular thing I read of his, he said one thing and then he was desperately trying to link it to something else that was actually contradictory. Yeah, that's all I really know about him. But he looks the part.
Yeah,
he's got the right beard, and he looks good.
Yeah, patriarchal. That's
very much
how we
so.
like it. Respectful, out of history book Russian philosophy.
What you're saying is that Russia, well, what I see of the problem with Russia is that there's so many different types of people there, and everybody's trying to pretend it's all Russia.
Yeah, that too. But you can unite those people, and how can you unite people? You unite them in prosperity, or unite them in hatred. So he tried hatred, because prosperity worked for
more
very
difficult.
few.
Yes.
It's difficult, a lot of work. You have to get the Western people in, the Westerners, which was the case in Russia. I mean, they had both. They had hate and they had certain prosperity for certain people, because they invited foreigners to work there all the time. From building Kremlin, is built by Italians, and icons built by Greeks, the famous Russian school of iconography. Theophan the Greek was the founder of it. And well, a lot of genius traveling Greeks, most names we will never know. But that was the thing. Russia was really indebted, and they really very close to the West in terms of getting everything from there up to now. I happen to be part of some movie projects in Russia as a translator in recent years. And I know that they did say movie trailers were all done in California, and of course the technology comes from the West, and the computers and final crews, like sound design and sound mixing and lots of things. Like 2/3 of those movies that the Russians were proud of and won awards with, they were finalized in the West. There was no specialist for this.
What are you saying? That Russia, I mean, obviously Russia produces, or has at least, it's produced a lot of great thinkers.
They're interesting. They're interesting thinkers, but there is an opinion. There is no serious, say, political philosophers in Russia compared to what is there in the field in the West. So finally, Putin settled for the. Nobody kind of advertised out of. It's hard for me to to think and talk at the same time on this subject, but and I feel like I'm hogging up too much of this time.
No, because I want to know what you think Russia can do. I mean, let's take Putin aside. Where is it going? I mean, it's a great landmass. It has many resources. Why isn't everyone there filthy rich?
Because there is a. Thank you for your question. It's a good question. A lot of countries are like this, but say in Saudi Arabia, yeah, I was never there, but I heard that there is oil there, and this oil gets the dividend, the money from selling it gets distributed among the citizenry, and
Yes.
that's why they can walk around and they expect the government to help them, and they have different they have no democracy, and so on and so forth. So whatever king decides, he has to decide properly, because there was no like you'll do this to us in parliament, and then we get the majority and we'll do this to you. So he's aware that there is a struggle for the power there, and he's trying to placate the population to keep everybody happy. There's not too many people in Russia, as Tevye the milkman said, there are too many poor people.
Yes.
So a lot of poor people, it's hard to make them happy because there's a lot of them, and there was no effort made. Bolsheviks said that that's why they were successful, because they said we're going to feed everybody, we're going to close everybody, and to some extent they did it, but on behalf of the richer people, more ambitious people who left in great numbers. And I think that Putin's guiding light is more along the lines of what's his name, Alexander Surkov or Dmitry Surkov. I don't remember the first name of this guy. He wrote about the Great Russia, and he wrote about in modern language, in kind of very forceful language, and he was Putin's main ideologue. So he said, "Let's turn the whole thing around." And there's a line, like very, very short. How they call it, shortcut. So shortcut is a shortcut to the final question, like we all gonna die, right? One
Right.
way. So
Yeah.
it's a thought that you cannot argue with, and it's a thought you cannot live with, because there is a reason why we're alive. So we got to find this reason today and tomorrow, and until that day. So, and based on this thought, on the cult of, it's called the cult of death, when you remind people that we're all going to die, and that nothing matters, because that's the
Because
end.
you're all going to die. Yeah.
Yeah, and he suddenly suddenly he offered the country to get rid of shame, to forget its history, accept certain things that he wanted people to remember, and they threw in some puzzling like letter Z, still puzzle for me why it's there.
I have no idea. It's not part of the Russian alphabet, so I just don't understand
No,
how they thought of that.
I think it's along the lines of swastika.
Do you
Being
know? Yes, I've
being
seen.
they even arrange two Z's to resemble swastika in Russia sometimes, and they say that it's used for intimidation, and people don't understand this whole thing, and the looks of swastika is still in the West is something that. People don't want to see, although it's an ancient symbol of prosperity, and you cannot avoid it. And when you're in Italy or in France or in Spain, it's everywhere. Because
It's all over India as well.
oh, India, yeah, of course.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's and this whole war is to establish great. It has no material meaning. When people talking about the gas in Donetsk area, in the eastern parts of Ukraine that were occupied prior to this war, Donetsk, Donbass, all those new republics. There's a lot of gas in Russia. There are already pipelines.
Yeah, they don't need extra gas, do they?
There's nothing.
But what they do need is control over the Black Sea.
They need that, but again, they have no fleet to speak of. They would be able to keep it. The boats, the ships they have are pretty bad in terms of modern technology. And the best ship, I think, Moscow was the name, was destroyed by Ukrainians. It's amazing how you see, the fighting spirit is important in wars. We find out, especially wars of this type. And Russia is just by sheer number of weapons and the number of people who they able to muster, they able to mobilize to fight. That's why this whole thing is continuing this way. And of course, Europe and United States, they don't want Ukraine to win. They don't want Ukraine to lose. They don't want Russia to win. So they keep the temperature just like to be at the body temperature, and no more, not to get the thing cooked finally, and
Well, just a
Ukraine
minute.
would
They're
prevail.
worried. I understand how governments are worried that Russia might react very badly if Ukraine started winning too obviously.
Yeah. It's depend now. It depends on the source where you get the news, but basically, the whole idea that the war is continuing until now, considering the size of the belligerents, it's a miracle that Ukraine is still standing.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah,
HIMARS and what, javelins?
NAPAMs, I think they're called, also another system. But I have here a paper that says that they should have gotten Patriot system as part of this $40 billion package. They don't have it. And if you go to the website called Protect Ukraine Now, I spoke with the gentleman yesterday. I spoke with a gentleman who had business in Ukraine, and I think he goes there still, probably, or he took those people out to the States or out of Ukraine. But he built this website to show what is promised and what is delivered. So everybody
Just
would
a
write.
minute. Yura, are you trying to say, or not to say, that it's in America's interest to keep Ukraine fighting for the arms industry?
No.
Right. Okay.
I don't think so, because arms industry, you know what happens? There's the arms industry, the military industrial complex, they call it, right? Since Eisenhower called it so, President Eisenhower. It thrives on government orders, of course, but what they do, innovation is a big part of it. So they come up, they do a lot of R&D, research and development, and they propose new armaments, and the old ones get sold, destroyed, preserved somehow. And there is a lot of equipment in Western Europe that could be supplied, like 48 hours. Ukraine would have it. Certainly Humvees, who are gas guzzling vehicles, but to me, this whole thing is the combination. Of course, there's this component of the people who want military orders placed by the government, but it's also a very inept government. They started the reign with rainbow flags on American consulates and embassies.
Yeah.
What kind of message it sends? I mean, I understand what's behind it. I understand they want to look good. Everybody wants to look good. And the way to look good today is to castrate your kids.
Yeah, that's right.
That's how you gain the standing in the society today. But with this logic, they just don't know how to act. They don't know how to finish this whole thing. And they don't believe.
So it's incompetence.
It's incompetence, like par excellence.
Yeah.
Say,
all right. I'll
of the
buy
highest
that.
order.
I'll buy that. Yeah.
That's along your rules, right? If you can explain something with stupidity and incompetence, then that does it.
Okay.
It's incompetence because my thinking is that they agreed, Putin and Biden, they agreed that Ukraine has to be kind of somehow rearranged, so there will be no more scandals going Biden family way.
Yeah.
And there will be no bad examples of self-governance for the Russian people. Thinking of big philosophical problems. I don't believe that Ukrainian grain played like the role that they assigned to it, or any other natural resources. The world is going to the green kind of agenda, and of course, coal is important. Coal stays, but Ukrainian coal is not a big issue in terms of the
I
riches
really
of
thought that
Russia.
Ukrainian grain was very important. Libya and Egypt both seem to, about 70 or 80% of their grain use is from Ukraine, apparently.
I must say, I'm not well read on this matter. I know that Russia, in my day, received a lot of assistance. In Soviet times, as I said, the grain was American grain was resolving factor in the matter of getting the Jews out of Soviet Union.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it
Ah.
was always American grain. We had not enough grain. I happened to be an interpreter once here, and the way it was less than 10 years ago. Time flies, of course. People came to buy some cattle to the United States from Kuban. Kuban is the place where you have it's the most fertile land there. Everything is richest in terms of agriculture and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So they came here, and I was called to be with them and translate. And the company was a Turkish company who had actually. It's funny how much we don't know about this world. I'm sure you don't know that there are big ships cruising around. Half of it is for, and they have like 5,000 heads of cattle over there on those ships, and half of them are pregnant cows, and half of them are cows for sale. So they're going from country to country and then deliver the animals from the boats.
Really? They're
Yeah.
like breeding farms on the
Breeding
water.
farms, yeah, that delivers not just breeding, but I know.
And then selling what they've bred.
Yeah,
But this is astonishing. I've never heard of this.
Yeah, this company, they had two ships like that. The Turkish company, they are in Fort Lee, New Jersey. And so I was there, and not to go into too many funny details that accompanied this whole thing, to country bumpkins coming to New York, and I was told to cater to every whim of theirs. Whatever they asked me to have, if they want drugs, I gotta get them drugs. If they want this, I gotta get them. But they were like really not interested even in each other, a man and a woman. But long story short, I asked them, why don't you just go and buy why don't you come to America? I have the Hereford breed in England. There are some cows in all over Europe. They're famous breeds.
Yeah.
They said Americans are the best. American beef is the best, which of course to some is debatable, but I really do like American beef more than even French. The famous forgot the name. It's somewhere in Burgundy.
Charolais.
Charolais. Thank you. I can watch these cows endlessly. Just stop the car, get out.
I don't eat beef, you see. So
yeah. No, but
I'm not really an expert on the taste.
Thank you for helping me. So
yeah,
with the name. So yeah, that's the thing. And I said, why don't you buy the steak breed, steak type of cows? Because all you're looking for is meat. And he said, we have no grass. We cannot feed them. And huge Russia cannot get a patch of grass for poor cows to develop this whole industry.
Probably it's the weather as well. I mean, cows are made for more temperate climates, surely, but they could be breeding buffalo. They're good with cold weather, aren't they? They could come up with something.
If they only asked the Israelis the right question, they would be able to do it. Because there is nothing that Israelis cannot do in terms of agriculture in particular.
Oh, yeah. Well, they would arrange it.
Yeah, but they can adjust to the system. I mean, it's just a vast amount of land, and it's not exactly a dust bowl, not exactly
No,
desert.
no, no. There's
So
many very fertile plains
yeah, they
across
get a
Russia.
lot of wheat from those Kuban areas, and there are movies made about it. So it's just ridiculous how this country is mismanaged uh, throughout like hundreds of years, like 400 years for sure. People, Peter the Great tried to change it. He was very cruel Tsar, but he wanted to make it manageable,
Mm.
and he succeeded to some extent, but it's all forgotten now. It's like they say, he said, I opened the window to Europe, and now they're trying to close. They actually closed it on Putin's watch.
Yes, yeah, yeah. It was. There's a couple of Russian websites I mean, YouTube sites that I access, and they're Russians. One of them, he lives in Russia, and he said in the 90s, it was like a free for all, and there was all sorts of things. There were all sorts of things starting up, and then it started to choke off again. It's like the Russians are afraid of freedom.
Yeah, our people, us, say, I have to say again, we leave Soviet Union, we leave Russia, and we find very we accustomed very quickly to new situation. I was 3 months. I was in the States. I would never go back to where I was, because it was so much more interesting, much more dynamic. If you want to find out about this, you can read that, and
Mm-hmm.
it's just knowledge was always my kind of point of concern. So, however superficial, I want to know more about more things. So, wider knowledge is what I like, and deeper knowledge. I have to go to some people that I trust as experts, not Dr. Fauci's expert, but type of expert. So he got fired. I mean, he's leaving. That's good.
Yeah, yeah, that's right.
He's. It's interesting. What are they preparing now? Because we are very suspicious. Now,
Right, you mean somebody else?
yeah,
Even
Brian
worse.
Stelter's gone. Dr. Fauci's leaving. CNN is in shambles. They try to
Yeah, yeah.
reorganize, but I
But
don't know.
CNN is reorganizing because it got taken over by what was the name? Warner Brothers, and they had this subsidiary, Diverse, I think it was called, and
Hmm.
that's owned by a Trump supporting billionaire.
Hmm.
And uh, he had to sell some of his shares because there's some law about him not holding a controlling interest, but he's definitely changing the ethos simply because of his general attitude. Have you heard it? You know who I mean? I'm trying to remember
No,
his
no,
name.
I have not caught up with that, but yeah, I have to look into this that
I'm
much.
sorry, it's the fringes of my general knowledge, but yeah, Warner Brothers got taken over recently, I
Hmm.
think, and they took over this other company, Diverse, I think. And
Hmm.
this company was owned by somebody called John something or other. And yeah, I'm sorry.
No, we'll see. We'll see.
Yeah.
We'll report
Anyway,
on that.
yeah. So that's had an effect on CNN's editorial policy, hasn't it?
No, absolutely, and of course, this whole TV industry is dying. Then the CNN made a number of missteps. They thought people would like to pay for their services. They created
Oh,
CNN Plus, and it failed.
yes,
And
yes.
Chris,
Within the day.
yeah, folded just like a cheap suit.
Yeah. Apparently, I was hearing some figures, but their viewing figures are just tanking, and people like Tim Pool are
Hmm.
getting more viewing figures, so obviously something had to be done.
No, a lot of the people took over. Basically, information industry, I think, is taken over by the people everywhere. or
Yeah.
wherever. The people just produce their stuff, and they pull the eyeballs off away from the traditional media, and that's that. And Nielsen, as much as they would like to lie in the ratings, they cannot, obviously.
When Trump lost, and I was corresponding with one of my own subscribers, and he was very depressed about this. And I said to him, well, it's depressing. I'm depressed too. But they're going to overreach themselves, and they're just going to blow up and pop like a balloon. So, just hang on to that. And that's what's happening now, isn't it?
Absolutely. Absolutely. They're full of lies, and their lies are obvious. And how can you argue with certain things that everybody can see? And of course, they do argue. And but the unfairness, going back to this treatment of migrants here in New York City, there's so many people, homeless people in the street. They get some assistance. They're like what is called working poor people, really poor people, and they get nothing from the government.
Yeah, and then
somebody walks in, and I don't know. I kept thinking of some example in the family when a stranger comes into your house and you give him more than you give to your own family. You take food from your children, you give it to a person, but that's something like not from real world. I mean,
so that leads me back to my original question. If your father let somebody into the house and then sent him to school instead of you'd say, why are you doing this? And that's more or less what the government is doing to its people, and not only in America, here in Britain as well. And you wonder what's going through their minds. How is this happening? And you can say it's incompetence, but even incompetence doesn't turn on its own people. So I still don't understand it.
It's some sort of a cultivated vice, I would say, some sort of a cultivated evil thinking. I know it doesn't help anybody. The government is so sure that nothing can move them away from where they are now, and that people are too lazy, too stupid to go and use the instruments of democracy that we still have here and in England and in Great Britain and in Europe. So they do crazy stuff to their own people, just mutilate their own children, which is which is what is going on. The manifestation of it is what we mentioned here in the conversation as well, and I know it troubles so many people.
The phenomenon of self-harm, where you get people, it's usually girls, but there can be boys too, where they they cut themselves or something like that, because they can't think of any other way to establish control over their lives. I'm often wondering whether it's not the Western societies doing the same thing.
Yeah, it's a mental disorder, but you can see certain. I see certain signs. I think it's just. And I hate to be called a conspiracy theorist, because I see practice of conspiracy, and it's an attempt to rearrange the world at the cost of rearrangees, so to speak, to make us pay for being castrated.
What a thought!
It's terrible, but we are taking a shipple who doesn't know what's good for them, and just enough is enough. And it's a big topic with me and with a lot of people, because people are looking for sense in what's going on, and we cannot find it. And I don't know whose fault it is, because scientifically speaking, we are not equipped to digest so much information as we get now.
We're
not supposed to have that much information. We think of ourselves as gods, and that's kind of mental already, because it's not so. Thank you very much. Thank you, Demi, and thank you, dear friends who came here. And I hope that there was something to start your day with in this conversation.
I have to say that thing about the ships and the cattle,
Yeah.
That's a revelation. I'll have to think
You're a
about
vegetarian.
that one. No, not a vegetarian, but the big
You
ones.
don't eat beef. Oh.
Yeah, I don't beef, sheep, pigs. You know, the four-legged variety.
All right.
Yeah.
All right, Demi, thank you so very much.
Right. Thank you. It was lovely to talk to you, Yura.
Thank you. I always enjoy our conversations.